Hey guys, it's Patria here. I'm your friend that's also a lawyer. And if you're watching this, it means that you're pretty keen to help yourself save a little bit of money on legal fees. And so today, what I wanted to cover was buying your first property. Or actually, it doesn't matter if this is your first property or your 10th property. How can you buy a property and save a little bit of money on legal fees? Well, lucky for you, you've got me, and I'll help you save some money. So let's get started. The first thing I want to cover is when do you need to actually instruct your lawyer? And the answer is you do not need to instruct your lawyer straight away.
Thank God.
If you have bought property more than once, you can use your agent to the best of your ability to help you make an offer. Now, when we make an offer for sale and purchase and you go through an agent, the agent will have a purchase pack. And so it's important that you ask for this as early as possible. Within the purchase pack, there will be an agreement for sale and purchase, which is blank with no information in it other than the vendor's contact details and stuff like that. There will also hopefully be any other documentation that might be relevant to the purchase. Now, if you get that purchases pack and you have absolutely no idea what any of it means, and you're ready to tear your hair out, then yes, absolutely, you can call your solicitor at this point and they can give you a hand and they can help you make an offer. But if you want to save a little bit of money on legal fees, then you can use the agent to help you do this. Now, let me show you what an agreement for sale and purchase looks like. So this is a standard agreement for sale and purchase, and luckily for us, they all look the same. At the top here, you'll see we've put the vendor information in and the purchaser. That's you. Here we have all of the basic property information, but here's the fun part. This is how much money you're going to offer, what deposit you want to pay, and when you want settlement to happen. Here's our standard conditions. So this is stuff like finance, LIM, toxicology reports, all the standard conditions that you might like to choose. You don't have to have anything in there. And if something isn't in there, you can always put it in this spot, the further terms of sale. This is where we can do specific or bespoke conditions specifically for your circumstances. Now, this is the duty schedule. You don't need to worry about this unless you're going to be selling taxable supplies, but this schedule you do need to worry about. This is everything that is included with the sale. So make sure that all the chattels you're expecting are actually listed in here. This is where you sign on the dotted line. So you sign as purchaser, the vendor will sign when they're ready to accept your offer. And then at the back, you need to put in your solicitor details. So like, obviously, you're going to put in me, right? Now that you're a pro when it comes to agreements for sale and purchase, you can go ahead and make your offer. Now, you can either work with the agent and they'll help you put that together. What they'll do is they'll fill out all of your personal details as the purchaser. They'll go through any conditions that you might have. They'll also ask you if you want to include any additional conditions over and above what's on the first page that we just spoke about. Now, this is where a due diligence condition is really important. But Patria, what the fuck is due diligence? Due diligence means that you have the opportunity to look at anything and everything that you deem necessary and important to you to make sure that the house is suitable for your needs. This is so much better than having like a finance or a LIM or a builder's report condition separately. And the reason for that is because when you make an offer and you have conditions, there is a clause in every standard sale and purchase agreement that basically says you need to make all reasonable attempts to satisfy those conditions, which means, let's say you get finance and builders, and technically your finance is approved and the building report comes back squeaky clean, but maybe you drove past on a Friday night and the neighbours are out the gate.
Oh, shit.
Or maybe you drove past after a really severe weather event and the front lawn floods something chronic. Or maybe something else came up on TradeMe and you just want to buy that now instead. If you've got finance and that builder's report is squeaky clean, you have no reason that you can back out of this agreement. And if you try and cancel for those two conditions alone, the solicitor on the other side can technically ask for evidence that you can't meet those requirements, and you can. A due diligence condition allows you to make all investigations that you deem necessary, and if you cancel under a due diligence condition, you don't have to give any reason whatsoever. So yeah, it kind of sounds boring, but it's so important. Now, agents are going to tell you not to use a due diligence condition, and it's important for you to understand why. Agents get paid when the property goes unconditional. When their deposit is paid, they take their commission. So it is in their best interest that you have less conditions, or the conditions that you have are something that they can control or that they can get an understanding from. So if you have due diligence, they'll be worried that you might change your mind and then they won't get paid. What I'm going to do is put on screen now my perfect due diligence condition that I use for all of my clients and all of my purchases. You are welcome to use something like this yourselves. Please be aware that I always encourage you to get independent legal advice when you are putting in conditions to an agreement. However, this particular due diligence condition is available online. You can Google it, so I'm not too worried about giving you this. But I always encourage you to go and see a solicitor before you do anything, especially if you're not comfortable. Alrighty, now you have made your offer with your due diligence condition. What happens next? Well, you put in your purchase price, you put in your conditions, and you give it to the agent. The agent is going to take it probably physically along to the vendors, and then the vendors will have a look at it. They then have an opportunity to come back to you and say, yeah, I'm happy, that sounds good. Or no, that sounds shit, and I'd like more money, and I'd like your conditions to be less intense, or maybe run for less time. At that stage, they can make what's called a counter offer, and they can say, yeah, look, we're happy with X, Y, and Z, but we're not happy with ABC. What do you think about our counter offer? You can then go back and say, no, that sounds shit. Or you can go back and say, yeah, that sounds great. This back and forward can go on for as long as you need it to. There is no timeline, but just be aware that once you've made the offer, if you want to go ahead and buy something else or maybe make an offer elsewhere, you need to rescind this offer, because otherwise you could be stuck in a position where you have two agreements on foot. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. However, once it all goes ahead, then we're going to date the agreement. Everyone's going to sign it, and that's when the fun starts. Alrighty, so your offer's been accepted. Now it's for the fun stuff. Once your offer has been accepted, then all of your timelines start ticking down. So if you've got a 10 working day condition, say for due diligence or for finance or something like that, if you sign it on Monday, day one is Tuesday. And then you have 10 working days to get things sorted out. Working day is basically any day where you can expect a business in New Zealand to be operating. So Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. We don't include weekends and we don't include public holidays. If you're in Auckland, you can also include regional holidays in Auckland, like Auckland Anniversary, and that goes for every other region and space as well, but Auckland's a good one to use as an example. So once those conditions start ticking down, that's when you really need to be doing your homework, and that is when your solicitor is going to get a copy of your agreement. What's really important is you tell your solicitor what you expect from them. Tell them you want them to look at certain things if you're worried about certain things. A general industry standard is that they're going to look at the agreement, they're going to look at the title, and they'll look at the LIM report if you've got one. What a solicitor can't do is look at a builder's report because they're not a builder, and they can't look at any other kind of reports you get from other professionals. That's for those professionals to do. It's always good to let your solicitor know that you're doing these things, and also send them a copy of those reports so they can put them on your file, but it's not up to them to look at them and give you advice on those. Another thing you might like to consider is that with the deposit, standard agreements say the deposit is due and payable when the offer is accepted, which is kind of a pain. So just be aware of that, especially if you're using KiwiSaver. What most people do, and most real estate agents will do this automatically, is they change that term and they say the deposit is only payable once you go unconditional. So once you satisfy all your conditions, but just check before you go signing anything. And if you are using KiwiSaver, you need to be aware that it takes 10 to 15 days to get the KiwiSaver released. KiwiSaver gets paid directly from your KiwiSaver provider to your solicitor. It doesn't go to your account. So you need to make sure you've got enough time to do that. You need to fill out a form. You need to sign it with your solicitor. Make sure you do that straight away. Very important. Okay. What happens once you're unconditional? Well, yes, we pay the deposit. If you're using KiwiSaver, that might be a little bit different, but we pay the deposit. And then basically we wait for settlement. What do you need to do in between times is tell your broker or your mortgage person at the bank that you're ready to go, and you need to organise them sending your loan documentation to your solicitor. This is basically when the solicitor does the lion's share of the work, and this is where the fees come from in terms of paying your lawyer to do some work for you. Unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do to save time with your solicitor on this part other than trust the process. But also make sure that your lawyer is aware of everything. Don't spring anything on them at the last minute, because if a solicitor has to do something under urgency, they charge you more money, and we don't want that.
Oh, God, please, no! No!
Once your loan documents turn up with your lawyer, they'll go and organise everything. So they set up a whole lot of documentation that you need to sign. Now, all land in New Zealand is on an online database called LINZ, and it's great because it means that lawyers and other conveyancing professionals can get into that database and make changes to titles. And what I mean by that is we can make sure that your name is put onto a title, so we transfer it into your name, or maybe we transfer it out of your name. We put mortgages on, we do all sorts of things. So when you're buying, these are the documents that we're preparing. something that says, yes, I'm happy for Patria to go onto Lynn's and make the change to put this particular property into my name. I can't just go making changes willy-nilly. So you need to sign that. We also sign all of your loan documentation with you, and we sign some other documentation that's required, like tax statements and overseas investment office declaration. So that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, there's no way around that. We do need to sign those, and you need to sign them with the solicitor. Once we've signed everything, we'll go ahead and send all your documentation back to the bank. We'll prepare everything that we need to prepare to make sure that we can settle on the settlement day. And then it's kind of down to you to just hurry up and wait, to be honest. And then settlement happens and you'll get the keys, you'll get to move in, and you get to enjoy your new home. And that's when you get to have a glass of bubbles, and then you call your solicitor and say, oh my God, Patria, you're amazing. You made this process so easy. You're great. You know what I mean? Anyway, look, I hope that this helped, and I hope that this has demystified buying properties a little bit for you, even if it means that you feel less silly when you go to talk to your lawyer the first time. Please do make sure that you hit the subscribe button and that you follow me, turn on notifications, and hopefully I can help you learn a little bit more about the law so that you don't sound silly when you're talking to a lawyer, but also so that you can save some money and time doing as much of this legal work yourself as possible. Alrighty, I will talk to you guys again soon. Mwah, bye.